I thought my 21st birthday would be perfect, until my uncle's words shattered my world forever. The moment the candles lit up my cake, I thought it would be the happiest night of my life. I had just turned 21, surrounded by friends, cousins, neighbors, and every family member who mattered to me. People were laughing, chanting for me to make a wish. I could see my mother, Sarah, smiling nervously. My father, Marcus, stood tall and proud, and my uncle, Liam, in the corner with a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at me in a way that made me uneasy. I leaned forward, ready to blow out the candles, when Liam's voice cut through the room like a knife. He slammed his glass on the table and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "It's time he knows the truth." The chatter stopped instantly. Forks froze midair. Whispers died on lips, and even the music seemed to fade into silence. I turned toward him, confused, my chest tightening as if something heavy pressed down on it. My mother's smile vanished. Her face went pale, and she shook her head quickly. My father stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "Liam," my father said sharply. "Not here, not now." But Liam ignored him. His hand reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. He placed it on the table next to my cake. The sight of it alone made my stomach twist. My mother's voice trembled as she pleaded, "Please don't do this. He doesn't need to hear it." Liam's eyes locked on mine, steady and unflinching. He shook his head once and spoke again, his tone heavier, almost sorrowful this time. "He's old enough. He deserves to know who he really is." Every eye in the room turned toward me. My cousins leaned closer. My friends looked at each other in shock. Even the younger children sensed something was terribly wrong. The weight of their stares crushed me. I had no idea what truth could possibly justify tearing apart my birthday celebration, but I knew I had to hear it. I swallowed hard, my voice shaky, yet louder than I expected. "What truth?" Liam slid the paper closer. "This is a will, dated 20 years ago, before you even knew how to walk." Gasps filled the room. My mother clutched my arm, begging me to stop listening. My father's voice rose, filled with anger and desperation. "Liam, enough. You'll destroy everything." But Liam didn't look at them. He looked directly at me, his expression fierce and unyielding. Then he said words that cut through me like a blade. "Your real father is—" Before he could finish, the room erupted into chaos. The party was supposed to be the best night of my life. Turning 21 felt like stepping into a new chapter, finally becoming an adult in every way. My parents had spared no expense to make it memorable. They rented the banquet hall at our local community center, the one with tall windows and polished floors that reflected the glow of string lights. A DJ played upbeat music. The buffet tables overflowed with food, and laughter filled the air. Everywhere I turned, there were familiar faces. Friends from college clinked their glasses together and teased me about how I was finally legal. My cousins crowded around the dessert table, daring each other to sneak extra pieces of cake before it was served. Neighbors who had known me since I was a child hugged me, telling me how proud they were. For a moment, I felt like the center of a world that revolved around joy. At the heart of it all were my parents. My father, Marcus, stood tall in his navy blazer, his silver watch catching the light whenever he raised his glass to greet someone. He had always been a man of discipline, the kind who carried himself with quiet authority. Growing up, I had spent years trying to earn his approval. He believed in hard work, good grades, and keeping your word. He never showed much softness, but when he said he was proud, it meant more than anything else. My mother, Sarah, was his opposite in so many ways. She was warmth and comfort, the one who stayed up late when I was sick, the one who sent care packages to my dorm when I started college, the one who reminded me that love was shown in actions more than words. She wore a deep green dress that night, her hair pinned back with silver clip, and I remember thinking she had never looked so beautiful. Her smile was wide, but I caught glimpses of something behind it, a flicker of tension in her eyes whenever Liam drifted near. Liam was my father's younger brother. He carried a kind of restless energy wherever he went, never fully blending into the background. He had been at family gatherings my whole life, but always on the edge of things, as if he was both part of us and separate. Unlike my father, who believed in rules, Liam was unpredictable. He wore a black jacket even though the hall was warm, his hair slightly unkempt, and his eyes never stayed still for long. Growing up, I had never been sure if I could trust him. He told stories that sounded too wild to be true, and yet he looked at me sometimes with an intensity that I never understood. Despite that, I was happy he came. Having the whole family in one room meant something to me. This night was supposed to be about celebration, about unity. I remember standing behind the cake, the candles flickering, listening to my friends chant my name, and thinking that maybe this was the kind of memory I would tell my kids about one day. Then I noticed my mother's hand on my shoulder. It felt warm but tense, as though she wanted to anchor me in place. My father stood just behind her, his expression unreadable. They looked proud, but there was a stiffness about them, something I brushed off at the time as nerves. Maybe they were just emotional about their only son growing up. The DJ lowered the music, and everyone gathered closer. I leaned over the cake, my eyes scanning the words, "Happy 21st, Ethan," written in blue frosting. My friends cheered. My cousins whistled. My father cleared his throat and raised his glass. "To my son," he said, "may this year mark the beginning of a life lived with honor, courage, and purpose." His voice was steady, but I noticed his eyes flick toward Liam. My mother quickly added, "Make a wish, sweetheart." She sounded cheerful, but her hand pressed harder into my shoulder, as if she was silently urging me to blow out the candles and move on. That was when Liam moved. He stepped away from the wall, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sound made several people turn. He held his glass high, his face stern and determined. "It's time he knows the truth," he said, his voice booming through the hall. The crowd fell silent. My smile froze. I glanced at my parents, but the look on their faces chilled me. My mother's lips parted, her eyes wide with fear. My father's jaw clenched, and his fist tightened around his glass. They looked nothing like the parents I thought I knew. They looked like people caught in a storm, desperately searching for shelter. I had grown up believing that my family was solid, built on love and trust. My parents argued sometimes, but they always stood united. They gave me the kind of childhood people envy: vacations in the summer, family dinners every night, hugs before school, and lessons about doing the right thing even when it was hard. They were not perfect, but they were mine, and I trusted them completely. Now, standing in the middle of my birthday party, I realized something was wrong. Their fear, the silence in the room, the way Liam's words sliced through the celebration like a blade, it all pointed to a truth I was not prepared for. The candles still flickered in front of me, waiting for me to blow them out, but the wish I had been about to make vanished. Instead of hope, all I felt was dread, a deep knowing that the night was about to change my life forever. When Liam's words thundered across the room, my entire body froze. For a moment, I thought maybe I had misheard him, but the silence that followed told me I hadn't. Every eye in the hall turned toward him. The celebration that had been filled with cheers and laughter just seconds before now hung heavy with suspicion and dread. Liam's gaze never left mine as he set his glass down. The sound echoed against the table, sharp and final, like the closing of a door. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper that looked older than I was. The corners were worn, the creases dark from being handled too many times. He laid it on the table next to my cake, directly in front of me, as though daring anyone to stop him. My mother was the first to react. She lunged forward, her hand reaching for the paper. "No," she whispered fiercely, her voice trembling. "Liam, you can't. Please don't do this." Her fingers shook as they hovered over the envelope, but she didn't take it. She turned to me instead, gripping my arm. "Ethan, you don't need to see that. It doesn't matter. It never mattered." Her desperation only made me more curious. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I looked at my father. His face was like stone, but his eyes burned with fury. His voice came low, cold, and commanding. "Liam, put away. You're not going to ruin my son's birthday with your lies. Liam's lips curled in a bitter smile. Lies? You know damn well this isn't a lie. You've hidden the truth for 21 years. Do you really think you can keep it buried forever? Gasps rippled through the crowd. My cousins leaned closer, whispering. A friend tugged on my sleeve, asking what was happening, but I barely heard her. My focus was on the three people standing before me. My mother, my father, and my uncle, locked in a battle that seemed to stretch back long before I was born. I forced my voice out, though it shook. What truth? What's going on? Liam's expression softened as he looked at me, but there was no kindness in it, only a grim determination. He tapped the envelope with 2 fingers. This will tell the story. Signed, sealed, and hidden away 20 years ago. It's about who you are, Ethan. Who your real father is. The words knocked the air out of me. I staggered back a step, nearly bumping into the cake table. My mother gasped, clutching my hand as though trying to hold me in the world I had always known. Don't listen to him, she begged. Your father is standing right here. The man who raised you. That's all that matters. But my father's silence was worse than her pleading. He didn't deny it. Not right away. His jaw flexed, his fists clenched at his sides, and for the first time in my life, he seemed unsure. Finally, he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. Enough. This is my son, mine. I don't care what you think you have in your hand, Liam. This is nothing but poison. Liam ignored him and slid the envelope closer to me. You've lived your whole life believing one thing, Ethan. Tonight, you deserve to know the truth, no matter how painful it is. You deserve to know where you come from. The guests shifted uncomfortably, some looking away, others staring at me with wide eyes. Hungry for drama they had no right to witness. The hall that had felt so full of love now pressed down on me like a cage. I could feel the weight of their stares, the pressure of their silence. My heart raced, my skin prickled, and my mouth went dry. I wanted to scream, to demand that they stop fighting and tell me the truth, but fear held me still. I looked at my mother again, her tears shimmering under the lights. She shook her head, her voice barely more than a whisper. Please, Ethan, don't let him take this night from you. Blow out your candles. Forget him. I turned to my father. His hands trembled as he pointed at Liam. If you care about this family, you'll shut your mouth and leave before you destroy everything. Liam stood firm, his voice rising. Destroy everything, or finally bring everything into the light. He jabbed a finger at the paper. That was written by our father before he died. He made sure the truth would survive, even if he buried it. And now it's time Ethan knows. I stared at the envelope, my mind spinning. 1,000 thoughts clashed inside me. Could this really be true? Was my whole life built on a lie? My legs shook as I stepped forward. I felt my mother's grip tighten, but I pulled away. My voice cracked as I spoke, louder than I meant to. I want to know. I have the right to know. Stop arguing and just tell me. The room erupted with whispers. Some people nodded, others shook their heads. My father's face hardened, his voice low and deadly. If you open that, you'll regret it, Liam. You'll regret it for the rest of your life. Liam didn't flinch. He looked straight at me, his expression almost mournful. The regret would be letting him live in the dark for another day. The tension was unbearable. My friends shifted uncomfortably. My cousins held their breath, and even the children seemed frozen in place. I stood between the people I loved most, torn between their desperate pleas and the lure of the truth. I reached for the envelope, my hand trembling. My father moved as if to stop me, but I pulled it toward me before he could. The paper felt heavy, far heavier than it should have, as though it carried the weight of decades. My mother sobbed quietly, covering her mouth with both hands. Liam leaned closer, his voice low but clear. Read it, Ethan. See for yourself. Then decide who you really are. The envelope trembled in my hand. It was just paper, thin and fragile, yet it felt like it carried the weight of everything I thought I knew about myself. I stared at it, my fingers brushing over the faded ink where someone had written my uncle's name years ago. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the murmurs of the crowd pressing in around that. I wanted to tear it open right then and there, but the fear in my mother's eyes stopped me. She clung to my arm, her nails digging into my skin as if she could anchor me to the world I had always known. Her face was streaked with tears, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Ethan, please don't do this. You don't understand what you're about to do." My father moved closer, his voice sharp with anger, though his hands trembled. "You listen to your mother. That man has hated me for years. He will twist anything to turn you against us." His stare burned into mine, demanding the obedience he always had. "You are my son. Nothing can change it." But I saw that flicker in his eyes, the hesitation he couldn't hide. A small voice inside me whispered that he wasn't only angry, he was afraid. That fear scared me more than anything Liam could have said. Liam stood across the table, his shoulders squared, his jaw tight. He looked like a man carrying a burden for far too long. His voice softened, almost breaking. "Ethan, I wish this could have been done privately, but they never gave me a choice. Tonight, you became a man. You deserve to know the truth about where you come from." The guests shifted, their whispers rising again, hungry for answers that were not theirs to hear. My friends looked at me with wide eyes, unsure if they should step in or stay back. My cousins leaned against each other, watching with nervous curiosity. Even the children sensed the tension, clutching their parents' arms and staying quiet. I felt like the whole room was pressing down on me, demanding a choice. My throat was dry, my stomach knotted, and I could barely breathe. I wanted to run, to escape the suffocating silence and the crushing stares. But more than anything, I wanted the truth. I pulled my arm free from my mother's grasp and held the envelope tighter. "No more secrets," I said, my voice shaking but growing stronger with every word. "I've lived 21 years thinking I knew who I was. If you've been hiding something, I need to hear it. Not tomorrow, not another time. Right now." My mother gasped and covered her mouth, her eyes filling with fresh tears. My father's jaw clenched, and he stepped forward, towering over me. "I forbid it," he said. His tone carried the same authority he used when I was a child, but this time it didn't land the same. I wasn't a child anymore, and his command only made me angrier. I raised my voice so everyone could hear. "You can forbid me all you want, but I'm not a boy you can control anymore. I have the right to know who I am. If you won't tell me, then I'll find out myself." A ripple of gasps spread through the room. My father's face darkened with rage, and for a moment, I thought he might strike, just to stop him from speaking, but Liam didn't flinch. He looked at me with steady eyes, then nodded. "Then let me say it." My mother lunged toward him, but two cousins stepped in between them, holding him back. Chairs scraped, voices rose, and the room filled with chaos. My mother cried out, begging them to stop, her voice breaking under the weight of everything. Through the noise, I stepped back and raised the envelope high. "Enough," I shouted. The room fell into a stunned silence as my hand shook, but my voice carried with a strength I didn't know I had. "I will hear it, whatever it is. I don't care how much it hurts. I will not live in lies any longer." Liam's expression shifted, a mixture of pain and relief. He reached across the table, placing his hand gently on the will in mine. "You're braver than they give you credit for," he said softly. "But understand, once this is spoken, nothing will ever be the same again." "I'm ready," I answered. "I deserve the truth." The air grew heavy. Everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the words that would change everything. My father's struggles weakened as he sagged against the arms holding him, his face pale with dread. My mother sank to her knees, sobbing into her hands. Liam straightened his back, his voice steady now, like a man who had finally reached the moment he had waited decades for. He looked at me, his eyes locking onto mine. "Your real father is." The last word hadn't left his mouth before the room erupted. My father roared in fury, breaking free from the cousins holding him. He lunged at Liam, knocking over a chair. Guests screamed and scrambled back. Plates shattered on the floor as people rushed out of the way. My mother's cries pierced through the chaos as she tried to pull me away. I stood frozen, the envelope still in my hand, my heart hammering against my ribs. The moment of truth was so close, hanging in the air, but violence and panic swallowed it before it could be spoken. In that instant, I realized I was no longer just a son at a birthday party. I was the center of a storm that had been building for decades, and my decision to demand the truth had ripped it wide open. The room erupted into chaos the moment Liam tried to speak. My father tore himself free from the cousins, holding him back, and lunged across the table, his face twisted with rage. He slammed his hand down, sending silverware scattering and knocking glasses to the floor. "You will not say another word," he roared, his voice breaking with fury and fear. Liam didn't flinch. He stood tall, gripping the edge of the table to steady himself. His eyes locked on mine. His voice rose over the noise, determined to finish what he had started. "Your real father is—" Before he could say it, my mother shrieked, throwing herself between them. She clutched Liam's arm, tears streaming down her face. "Please stop. Don't destroy him like this. Not here, not now." But the damage was already done. The will slipped from my hand in the commotion, fluttering onto the table. The paper opened slightly, enough for me to see bold handwriting across it. My name was there, written in black ink, underlined twice. My chest tightened as I reached for it, but my father's hand shot out, snatching the paper before I could. I grabbed his wrist, desperate, my voice shaking but loud enough to silence the room. "Let me see it. I have the right to know." For a moment, my father's eyes softened, almost pleading. Then his face hardened, and he ripped the paper in two. Gasps filled the hall as the halves fell to the floor. My heart sank, but Liam moved faster. He pulled another sheet from his jacket, his backup, the one he had hidden for this moment. He unfolded it with trembling hands and thrust it toward me. "This is the original," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "Our father's will. The one Marcus has been trying to bury for 2 decades. Ethan, look at it." I took the paper, my hand shaking so violently I could barely hold it steady. The words blurred at first, my vision clouded by tears and shock. I forced myself to focus, reading line after line until I reached the sentence that shattered everything. It named my biological father. The room seemed to tilt. My stomach dropped, and I gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. My ears rang as whispers surged through the hall, people murmuring in disbelief, some covering their mouths, others staring at me as if I had become someone new in an instant. I looked up at Liam. His eyes were wet, his face carved with guilt and sorrow. "I never wanted it to come out this way," he said, "but you had to know. You deserve the truth." My mother fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. She pressed her hands over her face, unable to meet my eyes. My father, no, the man I had called my father my entire life, stood rigid, his face pale, his body trembling. His voice cracked as he shouted, "It doesn't matter. I'm his father. Nothing can change that." But the words rang hollow. The truth was out, written in ink older than me. I turned to my mother, my voice breaking. "Is it true?" She lowered her hands, her eyes swollen. She nodded once, unable to speak. The sound of her sobbing filled the silence that followed. Anger surged through me, hot and uncontrollable. "All these years," I said, my voice shaking, "you lied to me. You both lied. You let me believe a story that wasn't true." My father's voice trembled as he tried to defend himself. "We did it to protect you, to give you a normal life. Liam couldn't be trusted to raise you." Liam's eyes smoked with fury. "I made mistakes, but I loved him. I still do. You had no right to steal him from me." The two men squared off, their shouts echoing through the hall, but their words blurred into noise. My focus was on the truth that had detonated inside me. Everything I thought I knew about myself, my family, my identity, the man I believed had shaped me, was torn apart in an instant. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some leaving quietly, others staying to watch the storm unfold. My friends stood frozen, unsure whether to comfort me or keep their distance. My cousins whispered among themselves, their faces pale. The hall that had been filled with celebration now felt suffocating. Every light was too bright, every sound too sharp. I dropped the will onto the table, unable to look at it any longer. My hands covered my face, and I struggled to breathe. My voice came as a hoarse whisper, but everyone heard it. Who am I supposed to believe? Who am I supposed to be? No one answered. My mother wept silently. My father stared at me, his eyes wide with fear that I would turn away from him forever. Liam looked at me with a desperate longing, as if hoping that revealing the truth would somehow bring us closer. The weight of the moment crushed me. I was no longer just Ethan celebrating a birthday. I was the product of betrayal, the child of a lie, the center of a war between two men who both claimed to love me in their own way. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The hall that had once been filled with laughter now felt hollow, like a battlefield after the fighting had stopped. The truth had been spoken, and it hung in the air, heavier than smoke. My 21st birthday, the night that was supposed to mark my step into adulthood, had instead torn apart the foundation of everything I believed about my family. I stood among shattered plates and overturned chairs, my chest tight, my head spinning. The faces of the guests blurred together, some staring with pity, others shaking their heads as if they could not believe what they had witnessed. My friends stood frozen, unsure if they should come closer or give me space. My cousins whispered nervously in the corner, their wide eyes filled with fear that their family was unraveling before them. Liam stayed rooted to the spot, his expression heavy with guilt but also defiance. He had done what he came to do, and in his eyes, the truth justified the chaos. My father paced like a man trapped, running a hand through his hair, his face pale with disbelief at how quickly he had lost control. My mother remained on her knees, trembling as though the weight of years of lies had finally crushed her. I wanted to scream, to run, to undo what I had just learned. Instead, I felt hollow. The question I asked myself again and again was simple. Who was I? The boy who grew up under the strict hand of Marcus, believing him to be his father, or the son of Liam, a man who had lived in the shadows of my life, watching but never stepping forward? When the last of the guests began to slip out, I finally spoke, my voice quiet but firm. You all had 21 years to tell me the truth. You had 2 decades to prepare me, to let me grow up knowing who I really am. Instead, you lied, and now I don't know if I can ever forgive you. My father stopped pacing. His shoulders sank, and for the first time in my life, I saw him look small. I raised you, Ethan. I gave you everything I had. No matter what Liam says, that is what matters. Liam stepped forward, his eyes locked on mine. And I am the man who should have been there from the beginning. I never stopped caring about you. They cut me out, but you deserve to know that your blood is my blood. Their words pulled me in 2 directions, each man claiming me as his own, but I could not choose between them. In that moment, all I could feel was betrayal. I turned away from both of them, my voice breaking. You say you love me, but love doesn't hide the truth. Love doesn't bury secrets. If this is love, then I don't want it. My mother reached for me, her hand trembling, but I stepped back. Her sobs grew louder, and she whispered, I only wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? I asked, my voice raw. The truth. You protected yourself. You protected your image, and you left me in the dark. The silence that followed was unbearable. My father's head dropped. Liam's fists clenched at his sides, and my mother wept into her hands. I walked out of the hall that night without blowing out the candles, without making a wish, without saying goodbye to anyone. The days that followed were a blur of anger, confusion, and silence. My phone buzzed with messages from friends and family, but I ignored them. I spent long nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of my life, searching for clues I might have missed. I wondered if the way Liam looked at me over the years had been more than curiosity. I questioned why my father sometimes seemed harsher with me than with anyone else. I remember my mother's nervous smiles when certain family stories came up. Suddenly, everything felt suspicious, as if my entire childhood had been staged to hide a secret. The truth changed me. I stopped seeing my parents as untouchable figures of authority and began seeing them as flawed people capable of deep betrayal. I stopped believing that family was defined only by love and sacrifice. I realized that family could also be built on lies and silence, and that the people closest to you are sometimes the ones who wound you the most. But the truth also forced me to grow. I had a choice to make: either let the secret destroy me or use it to build a new understanding of who I was. I came to see that blood doesn't define a father. Actions do. Marcus raised me, taught me, and provided for me. Liam gave me life, but he was a stranger in every way that mattered. Both truths were real, and both were painful. In the end, what I learned is that the truth always surfaces, no matter how deeply it is buried. Lies rot from the inside out, and when they break open, the damage they cause is far worse than if the truth had been told in the beginning. That night was supposed to be about celebration, but it became the night I lost my innocence. It was the night I learned that the people I trusted most could betray me. And it was the night I began to decide who I wanted to be on my own terms, not defined by anyone else's secrets.